got teeth, but at least he speaks nicely, doesn't he? Joining us now is 𝕁𝖆𝖒𝖕𝖞𝖗𝖎𝖚, who's a member of the Vampire Society and thinks it's all jolly good fun, really, and Bishop Manchester, who believes it very definitely isn't. Let's get this bishop business cleared up. I mean, you are a bishop in the old Catholic Church?
That's correct.
Which isn't the same as the Roman Catholic Church that we all know about.
No, it seceded from the Roman Church in 1724 and is independent, but has valid sacraments and orders recognised by Rome.
Okay. Well, if generations of children and adults have had a good laugh and a good old shiver in the dark at vampires, I mean, why do you take them so seriously?
Well, I'm an exorcist, have been for a quarter of a century, and I take the casting out of demons very seriously, and I consider, as do other clergy, the vampire to be a manifestation of the demonic horde, the demonic legions.
So actually, you genuinely believe that vampires exist, they're real?
I believe that amongst the demonic legion there are those demons with vampiric attributes which can only best be described in those terms.
And you say that you've actually killed, slain too?
No, killing and slaying is not, would only apply to human, and I have no human enemies. My enemies are my enemies are the principalities of darkness, and I have exorcised, that is cast out.
Yeah.
You can't kill, you can only remove.
But I thought you went into Highgate Cemetery and went into a tomb and saw, according to press coverage at the time, saw a sort of creature with horrible eyes.
Absolutely. A manifestation, that's right.
Yes. What did you do to it?
And not only I, but many others besides.
And what did you do to it?
Eventually, but not there, I managed, with great care and attention, to exorcise it in the ancient and approved manner, by the incineration of fire and the rite for the dead and the various exorcisms.
Did you put a stake through its heart?
It was dispatched I mean, desperate measures in desperate times were applied. Yes.
But how do you know it wasn't a real person, sort of, you know, freaking out on drugs? You might have murdered somebody.
Because it was capable of metamorphosis and it was demonic. There is no way that a demon could be mistaken for a person.
Just one question before we come to Tina. I mean, I'm not being rude, all right? I promise you, but a lot of people watching would think, he's bonkers. I mean, he's actually out to lunch. You really think these things exist? And you've actually taken... Well, you promised us you've actually taken care of it.
I'm merely telling you what the Church has been telling you for 2,000 years. I'm saying no more, no less. But the Judeo-Christian tradition has always believed in demons. And demons with vampiric attributes, that is to say, those that suck the life force, drain you of your energy till you expire, satanic emissaries, if you will, have been the part of the belief system of the Judeo-Christian system all along.
So you're seeing it almost as a kind of allegory, really? I mean, it's not that you really think there are people with pointy teeth going around sucking people's...
No,
all right, spirits or
masquerading demons.
But with pointy teeth and
they can masquerade as absolutely anything.
All right. Tina, in praise of vampires, please.
Well, they're fun. They were largely invented by Dr. John William Polidori in 1819. They haven't been part of the tradition for 2,000 years.
The 𝖁𝖒𝖕𝖚, or departed spirit, was the soul of the dead person which for some reason could find no rest, and wandered over the earth, laying wait to seize upon a man. Especially did it lurk in deserted and ill-omened places. If the spirit of the dead man be forgotten and no offerings were made at the tomb, hunger and thirst would impel him to come forth from its abode in the underworld to seek the nourishment of which it had been deprived. And according to the old proverb, since a hungry man is an angry man, it roams furiously to and fro, and greedily devours whatsoever it may.
there was an outbreak of vampire belief in Middle Europe in the 18th century, which was acknowledged as being quite new and strange. 𝕯𝖆𝖒𝖕𝖞𝖗𝖎𝖚, an Augustinian, wrote about them, and he had obviously never heard of them before.
Hang on, what you're saying is that the vampires that you know and love are real people like you camping it up?
Yes. Well, no, they're fiction.
Vamping it up.
They're fiction. They're not real at all. They're in books, they're in films,
Yes.
and people can dress up and pretend.
Yes.
If they were real, who would pretend? They'd be horrible.
Well, see, what he's saying that you do by sort of enjoying vampires and celebrating vampires, it's a bit like the Ouija board syndrome. You're kind of there encouraging some sort of evil intent.
Naturally, any celebration or glorification of evil or darkness is a way of opening a door to darkness. Seek and you'll find. Seek darkness, death, destruction, disease, and you'll find it, sure enough.
But if you're just seeking a good time,
there's no harm in fancy dress. There's not even harm in enjoying a good film which frightens. Particularly where it's a crusade against the devil, as the original Dracula.
You mean you're saying that playing around with it masks the deep evil underneath?
The problem with certain groups and organisations today is that they wish to emulate the vampire.
Well, like you do,
Is that they...
No, she wants to have a good time, don't you?
So you're not aware of members of your own society that sleep in coffins, that visit graveyards at night, that have had fangs put into their mouths?
We've only got 10 seconds left, so
Yes, thanks for fancy dress. Not to imitate a non-existent evil.
Well, non-existent in your opinion. Death will find you soon enough.
I kind of have a feeling that you wouldn't agree, but anyway, thank you both for coming in.
I can understand how the romantic image is fascinating, particularly for the cinema and literature. It has very little, well, it has nothing to do with that demonic manifestation which itself is perhaps the most malign of its type.
As well as those who have what I would call schizotypal personalities, there are others, I have to say, who are members of the Vampire Society and other affiliated groups who one must describe as narcissistic personality disorders. By this I mean people who are rather self-obsessed, who are interested in the way people see them, and who like dressing up because of the way other people look at them, who are concerned about their body image and their shape, and want to be loved and liked, and basically are doing it for attention. I love me, what's your hobby?
My name is 𝕯𝖆𝖊𝖒𝖚𝖚, and I've been a member of the Vampire Society for over 2 years now. I don't know, I suppose I'm tall, slim, elegant, flamboyant, overwhelming, powerful to an extent, sensitive, caring. Sounds a bit egotistical, doesn't it? But
one thing is for sure, it's like a drug, that the interest in this fearfully fascinating subject by certain groups of people is so strong that they are hooked on it.
It's a group of people with an interest in the Gothic and a lot of interest in vampires and a great deal of interest in showing off. We like costume, we have fun.
A certain amount of this might be regarded as harmless up to a point, particularly where people are young and adventurous. But there is a growing trend, and I have been witness to it, of those people who are more than willing to drink the blood of their partners, to drink the blood of strangers, to drink blood communally, and to partake of ceremonies and rituals which at the very kindest can only be described as satanic.
We're not interested, very, very not interested in people that drink blood. I mean, our ceremonies mainly involve in drinking red wine, well, occasionally too much red wine, and it would be going down to the beach and paddling at 1 o'clock in the morning in September.
You ready? Okay.
Vampires have been the subjects of books and plays for centuries. Today these scary fictional characters appear in countless movies and hit TV series. But one woman from Pennsylvania has taken her vampire...
To me, when I had this kind of awakening, I ran off with it like an absolute ass. And I was just so empowered by it. I didn't care what anybody said. It was you, I'm a vampire, and that was it.
The Vampire Court of Austin is essentially a town hall for...
Pardon me, I'm gonna brush my hair. I'm gonna get my...
Maybe it's weird, which perhaps to a degree makes it evil. But no, we're not evil at all. Look at me, how could you call me evil?
The vampire, when it manifests, whether it is corporeal or in a transitory, if almost non-material, spectral condition, the vampire is masquerading to trick us, to seduce us, to bring us into its world, where we will thence fall prey.
There are what they call psychic vampires. I'm sure that most of it...
There is a danger for those who are so attracted to the cult that they not only want to dress up and appear as though they were a cinematic vampire, but, as I know is the case, want to transcend the very border of life and death themselves. They don't just want to visit sepulchral places, ruined, forgotten tombs. They want to occupy them eternally. This is the danger.
This video was funded by my amazing Patreons. If you would like to have access to the behind the scenes, see the videos early, and influence the creation, please feel free to check the link below. Istria, 1655. It's 1656, and a dark cloud is looming over the 𝕰𝖒𝖕𝖚𝖚 family. Standing here in the local cemetery, surrounded by the names of those once loved and some forgotten, Father Gjorgo reads the burial rites as they lay 𝕆𝖆𝖒𝖚 into the ground. As the family grieves, casting their pain to the heavens, they wish for his soul to now finally be at peace. It is not known if he was suffering from an illness and died under the loving care of his wife, or if his death was sudden. After the service, the family say their final goodbyes and make the sorrowful walk back home. Now templed in twilight, most of the townsfolk are dragging their weary bodies home from the grueling work in the fields. As many rest their heads under the waxing gibbous moon, a grotesque figure rises from the grave. Its flesh decayed, fetid and rotten, a face of twisted cartilage and sinew, tainting the landscape with each gnarled step. 𝕆𝖆𝖒𝖚𝖚𝖚𝖚 has returned as a Strigoi. It doesn't take long for the residents to begin reporting of a strange knocking at their doors, even scratching at their windows. With each passing night, their terror becomes even more oppressive as sightings of the abomination are whispered about the town. Many take refuge in the church, being consoled by Father Gjorgo, who promises them that this evil will pass and that there is no need to be afraid. When the villagers return to their homes, one of them remains behind. Father Gjorgo starts to attend to his duties, unaware of his lingering guest. When he looks up, he realizes it's the widow, and her face is a picture of pure terror and shame. Not being able to harbor this dark secret, she breaks down in fear, her frantic voice a cacophony of unintelligible shrieks. Father Gjorgo tries to calm the widow, and after some time, she tells him what happened the night before. As the town sleeps, a thunderous widow lays in bed, grieving the loss of her husband, her tears melding with the rain. She remembers his smell, his touch, lost in the black mire of painful memories of a life now sadly departed. But there is another smell, something putrid and rotten, a miasma cloying in the air like a thick, oozing wound. But it's not the smell she finds most disturbing. A sound can be heard weaving with the thunderous roars, and ever so slowly, it begins to approach from the black. Before her, partially obscured by the oppressive gloom, is a rancid corpse. A hollow shell of her former husband, its wilted lips cracked dry against rotting gums, and simultaneously breathing and gasping for air. The widow is paralyzed by fear, her feeble bones turn to granite as the creature reaches out to touch her, its yellow talons sharp enough to flay the skin. As the abomination climbs onto the bed, the widow prepares for her death, but the creature does something far more sinister. The widow is violated by the beast. After hearing the story, Father Gjorgo does what he can to console the widow. Upon her leaving, a crushing weight manifests itself in his chest. He knows the town he loves is in great danger. Much later, the priest is preparing to shut the church for the night. But once again, he notices there is another guest sitting at one of the pews. His first thought is that the widow has returned, finding solace in holy ground. But then the smell hits him. The putrid meat. The creature sits there staring at the priest, a predatory glare sizing up its prey. Father Gjorgo in a panic grabs his crucifix and holds it towards the creature. Feeling protected by his deity, he demands 𝕮𝖚 to return to the pits of hell. The creature, in retaliation, almost seems to cackle as it flees the church, but it was unaffected by the priest's demands. 𝕮𝖚 now descends into utter darkness. With each passing night, a villager is savagely attacked by the 𝕮𝖚, their bodies utterly eviscerated and butchered. The scenes left behind embodied that of a painter's descent into madness, but those who lock themselves away aren't safe either. A plague has accompanied the creature, and somehow it has the ability to choose who it infects. A strange moss-like substance slowly eats away the flesh and boils, swell and disfigure the host. Their fears become so extreme that going out at night is seen as a death sentence. With sickness and death taking place each night, 𝕮𝖚 is slowly dying. 16 years later. The once beautiful town of 𝕮𝖚 is nearing its final breath. Over the course of nearly 2 decades, 𝕮𝖆𝖒𝖕𝖚𝖚𝖚 has caused utter carnage. At some point, the widow succumbed to the fear of the beast and perished. His 2 children, Anna and Nicola, fled to Florence, and the townspeople sit with bated breath as one by one they are hunted. But there is a light in these dark times. A small group of men, one of them now being the old Father 𝕊𝖒𝖒𝖏, are currently discussing a plan to track down the creature and destroy it. The trouble they had was not knowing who or what the beast was. But now, after much discussion, they have come to the conclusion that it must be a 𝕮𝖚, and the only person who could have become one was 𝕊𝖆𝖒𝖚𝖚𝖚𝖚. 𝕊𝖆's apparent past, and the fact it only appeared after he died, 𝕊𝖆 is the main suspect. That night, after arming themselves with pitchforks, torches and hawthorn sticks, Father 𝕊𝖒𝖒𝖏 leads the men, one of which who also happens to be the town mayor, to the final resting place of 𝕊𝖒𝖒𝖚𝖚𝖚𝖚. Upon reaching the grave, they initiate the first part of their plan. The priest begins to perform an exorcism on the grave. 2 of the men drive their shovels into the dirt and begin to exhume the coffin. Once it is revealed and opened, they see the beast that has been haunting their town. The grotesque sight causes some of the men to flee in fear, but Father 𝕊𝖒𝖏 stands strong. Pulling his crucifix, he once again demands the creature to leave this place, but this time, in retaliation, it doesn't laugh. The creature rises from its slumber and slashes the priest, causing him to stumble backwards. Another villager charges at the beast with the hawthorn stick, a supposed weakness to the 𝕮𝖚, but it merely snaps against the creature's stomach, its skin as hard as stone. It almost appears as if all is lost, but one man by the name of Stephen Milisic steps forth brandishing his axe, and in one foul swoop, he chops into its neck. The 𝕮𝖚 lets out a loud shriek as it falls into its grave. Stephen grabs the handle and wrenches it out of the creature, and brings it back down with all of his rage. The creature's wound bleeds profusely, and it slowly fills the grave with all the blood it drank over the past 16 years. As the men stand over the creature, they see the blood solidify, cocooning the beast in its spoils. And with that, the 𝕮𝖚 is dead. light of first dawn shining into their bleary eyes, their bones cold and bodies weary from sleepless nights, the survivors are greeted with the hideous sight of the creature's hunt. The thoroughfare is now swamped in blood, with the pungent smell overpowering their senses, and many of the homes laid bare with its previous occupants gutted on the streets. Without a moment to spare, many gather what little provisions they have left, for the mornings are now a festival of fear. With either horse and cart or on foot, many attempt to flee, their destinations unknown, for the pandemonium has reduced the village to a shivering wreck. But a few remain behind, refusing to give up their lives to some hideous beast. After a week of more bloodshed, the chaplain calls for a meeting on Palm Sunday in the parish church, where he plans to rid the village of the abomination. He knows the only person who could have returned as this monstrosity was a stranger, and after assembling a group of devout followers and prominent citizens, his plan of attack laid bare, he makes it known he will not see the remainder of his flock dragged down into the pits of hell. With righteous fury, he will cast the creature back to the depths and salt whatever earth it walked upon. But what the priest doesn't know is that he will never get a chance to initiate his plan, for two brave young men are already at the grave, the two brothers who lost their father to the plague. With shovel and pickaxe, their bodies covered in mud and perspiration, the two brothers work tirelessly to uncover the hideous truth buried deep within the soil. For they find no coffin buried beneath the dirt, but instead a hole leading into a long-forgotten crypt. Climbing down into the pit, they soon discover the remains of the stranger's coffin at the bottom. It has been splintered into pieces and claw marks cover the surface. Clearly, when he returned as the ghoulish spectre, the thrashing and clawing of his body caused the collapse. Covering their faces from the stench, one of them ignites a torch to bring light to this layer of unbroken blue. It is clear that for centuries it has been long abandoned, but now its new occupant has called it home. For in the light, the hideous truth is laid bare for all to see. They now know where all the villagers had gone. Lining the walls like grotesque decorations of a mad king, their bodies in different stages of decay, contorted and strung up, the chewed entrails leading further into the crypt, and the ones that still have faces clearly show they died screaming. The two brothers know somewhere deep within, the body of their father lays forgotten and tossed aside like a misused toy in this labyrinth of gore. As they traverse the near endless corridors, the torch's light glistening off the moist remains of the recently buried, the fat maggots dropping from the ceiling, their hunger sated, the two brothers finally enter the main chamber of horrors and uncover the depths of the creature's greed. With its lust for blood and endless gorging, it has caused it to become so bloated and fat that it is unable to move, its stomach protruding from its body like a toad, far too heavy for its cadaverous frame. Sitting upon its throne of gore, its features puffy and covered in claret, it glares at the two men with utter hatred. Brandishing the spade like a holy lance, one of the brothers steps forth and attempts to slay the beast, but with slashing talons and a hideous screech, the creature fends off its attacker. One of the young men, seeing no other option, throws the torch at the beast, causing it to shy away from the flame. Knowing this is their only chance, they get behind the creature and with great effort pin it to the floor, the weight of its bloated stomach trapping it to the coarse stone. With a sharp thrust downwards, the spade bites into its neck, and with a twist of the blade, its vertebrae is split, and with immense effort, its head is slowly torn from its body, the sinew and muscle stretching like black vine. The brothers gag as they witness the head tear off, and the once bloated body spew forth all the blood and meat it had gorged upon, and like a deflated flesh balloon, it returns to its cadaverous frame. Seizing it by the legs, they return to the entrance, and to their surprise, they see the priest and his followers staring back down at them. After climbing out of the hole and hoisting the body above ground, the priest begins to shout at the young men for being careless with their lives, but he is also full of an unnameable fear. For the creature isn't dead. He explains how to really kill it. They must remove its blackened heart, otherwise by the next night it will return and its revenge will be biblical. Seizing the shovel, the priest kicks the corpse onto its back, and with righteous fury he promised the creature, he pierces the blade into its sternum, and with a twist and a solid kick, he tears open its ribcage and exposes the still beating organ. Grabbing it with both hands, he tears the heart out of the chest cavity and presents it to the brothers to be burned. Now tightly bound, the body is dragged through the village like a grotesque trophy and eventually thrown onto the pyre. And as the fire burns, the 𝖁𝖨𝖕𝖒𝖕𝖚 vampire is no more.
First published in 1746, the treatise on the apparitions of spirits and on vampires or revenants of Hungary was an extensive investigation into the paranormal written by Benedictine monk Anton Augustin Kelmet. The book covered all manner of the supernatural, from angels, demons and ghosts to witchcraft and sorcery. The work analysed accounts of the various topics from mythology and folklore, as well as the Bible and historically documented accounts. It was divided into 3 tomes, the second of which contained 63 chapters, all dedicated to vampires and the undead. One documented account was that of a soldier who, in 1730, was lodging at a peasant's house in Hungary. The soldier claimed that he was sitting with a homeowner and his family for dinner when a man that he didn't know entered the house and sat down. The soldier noticed that the homeowner appeared to be fearful of the unknown dinner guest. The next morning, the homeowner was discovered dead. The family told the soldier that the strange man that sat at the table the night before was actually the father of the homeowner, who had been dead for more than 10 years. The soldier informed his regiment and the army began to investigate. The captain of the infantry, along with several officers and a surgeon, interviewed members of the man's family, along with other residents of the village. The accounts matched those of the soldier, and the father's corpse was exhumed. They found that the father, although dead for more than 10 years, still had the blood flow of a living man. The captain ordered his head to be cut off and his remains reburied in the tomb. Sometime later, the same captain received information that another man who had been dead for more than 30 years returned to his family's home on 3 separate occasions. Each time he was said to have sucked the blood of one of the members of the house. Firstly his brother, then son, and finally a servant. All 3 men were reported to have died immediately after being attacked. Once again, the man was suspected of being a vampire and his corpse was exhumed. Just like the previous case, the man's body was found to have a living blood flow, despite the fact that he had been dead for more than 30 years. The captain ordered a large nail to be driven through the man's temple and his corpse placed back into the grave.
The Phantom of Crogling Grange is one of the best known vampire stories in Britain. Legend tells that Crogling Grange was in the hands of the Fisher family for many centuries. In the early 19th century, the Fishers moved from the property into larger dwellings, and put the property up to let. All during the long cold winter, the house was empty. As the winter passed into spring, the Grange was finally let to 2 brothers and a sister called the Cranswells. It seems they enjoyed life to the full and soon settled into village routine, and socialised with the local people. They were well liked within the village and loved their new home very much. One summer's evening, Miss Cranswell looked out the window in the direction of the darkened churchyard at the bottom of their long garden, and noticed something peculiar in the vicinity of the churchyard. It seemed that above the darkened blackness of the gravestones she could see 2 points of light moving. In time they moved from the graveyard over the shadows of the wall, moving closer to the bottom of the garden where they played around the churchyard wall. By this time Miss Cranswell's curiosity had given way to a deep feeling of unease, She shut the window, tight-bolted the door and laid down on her bed to try and get some sleep. On the verge of sleep, she was suddenly jolted awake by the low rustling from outside the window. She twisted in bed and sat upright. Outside the window were 2 points of light which she recognised as the vampire's eyes. He stepped to the bed and in one movement grabbed her hair with his hands. He then pulled her head back as if to deliver a kiss. The brothers, sleeping in separate rooms, were aroused by the loud-pitched scream that seemed to shake the very walls of the Grange. In a moment they were before their sister's door. The door was locked, so they smashed through it, breaking into the devastating scene. There was a stench of mouldy decay in the air, and upon the bed lay their sister, blood pumping from gashes in her neck. One of the brothers rushed to the open window and just caught sight of a shadow flittering across the bottom of their garden near the churchyard. They managed to stop the blood flow and revive Miss Cranswell. The next few hours were spent in an attempt to save her life. Miss Cranswell survived the attack, and when she was strong enough to travel, they took her to Switzerland to recuperate in the fresh mountain air. When the full story was in the open, the brothers swore revenge on the creature. So it came to be that the Cranswells returned to Groglin one dark winter's day. Miss Cranswell took her place in the room overlooking the churchyard, and as the moon rose, a pair of bright lights shone in the windows of the churchyard. Once more the figure of a man appeared at the window and picked the leaded glass to gain entry to the bedchamber. This time the two brothers were lying in wait in the shadows. As the figure came to step into the room, they both released shots at the creature. There was a low howl and the creature sped off at the direction in which it came. Not wishing to follow such a night creature into its domain, the two brothers waited for daybreak. First thing in the morning they took Miss Cranswell to safety, and gathered all the residents of the Grange around them to carry out their gruesome task. The men searched the graveyard for any signs of disturbance. On finding none, they turned their attention to the church. All was quiet, but they noticed that the crypt door was slightly ajar. Pushing into the crypt, they were met with a chilling scene. All around the crypt were the scattered remains of broken coffins and human bones. One coffin stood alone in the corner and seemed to have been untouched by the chaos. The villagers wrenched off the coffin lid. Inside, wrapped in mouldy clothes, was what they assumed to be a vampire. Its eyes were cold and lifeless in the daylight, but a fresh pistol wound was gaping from one of the creature's legs. The villagers dragged the coffin and its demonic contents out into the churchyard and burned the lot to ashes. Nobody seemed to know where this strange creature came from, or why it remained dormant in the centuries of peace when the Fishers lived in the property. One can only surmise that during the period of dereliction, an age-old horror was reawakened, and would not return to rest after the house was reoccupied. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.